Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tim Mould, and I am part of Accenture's higher education practice. I'm based out of our Boston office. I work at the intersection of strategy, operations, and technology. And we have, I think, what will be a very engaging session for you on a topic I think that is very timely. Joining me will be Father Steve Katsouros. I met Father Steve last year. As a brief introduction, he is the president and CEO of the Come to Believe Foundation. This is a new position. Before that, he was the founding executive director of the Arrupe College, a division of Loyola University of Chicago. And in a prior experience, he was also the co-founder of the Gonzaga program at the St. Aloysius School in New York City. I've found working with Father Steve to be very innovative, a deep thinker, but he takes action and makes things happen. He's my colleague and friend, and I'd like to introduce you to Father Steve Katsouros. Father Steve?
Well, Tim, thank you for that great introduction. It's terrific being with you today and always, and certainly Arrupe College, where we first met. That was a wonderful experience of partnership, of collaboration. Now, what Tim did not say in the intro was that I'm a Jesuit, and he's a graduate of Notre Dame, which is not a Jesuit school. We pray for people at Notre Dame, and it's worked out for Tim. You know, I think he's coming along. He'll be just fine, even though he didn't go to a Jesuit school. And to add insult to injury, his son is now very happily enrolled at Villanova, a Catholic school, Catholic university, but not a Jesuit school. So, Tim, I don't know why I hang around with you. You know, I mean,
well, it could be we made a connection because while I haven't been gone to a Jesuit high school or university, I feel like I was Jesuit trained at the dinner table, as my father is a double degree philosophy and English from Georgetown and law degree from Georgetown. So in a sense, I got a Jesuit education for 18 years before I even went to Notre Dame. So,
well, that's why I like you. It's through your father. Terrific. Now, I don't know if your father told you about Father Pedro Arrupe. Father Arrupe was a great, great leader of the Jesuits in the 20th century. And so when Loyola University Chicago decided to open this new academic unit, a new college, they named it after Father Arrupe. What is Arrupe College? It's a two-year college. It's a two-year college awarding associate's degrees. Friends of mine call it like a Jesuit community college. That's sort of right, but sort of not, because Arrupe is a college like the School of Business or the College of Arts and Sciences, or the nursing school. This is the two-year college within Loyola University. And why did Loyola invite me to start this and to gather a group of highly talented colleagues to found this new academic unit at Loyola Chicago? We recognized that we were missing out on great young people in Chicago, students who were Pell eligible, who were undocumented, who were first gen, whose grades in high school GPAs were 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, ACTs, SATs, 17, 18, 920. They would never dream of going to Loyola Chicago, never. And they couldn't afford to go to Loyola Chicago. And yet, you know, again, I'm a big believer in Jesuit education, but we can generalize this. Higher education is for everyone, and quality higher education, high quality higher education is for everyone. And so in 2014, I moved to Chicago to launch Arrupe College for this population, for this new group of students, a commuter school within Loyola University.
So it's a two-year school in order to prepare students to graduate, to actually move on and go to a four-year college.
That's right, Tim. We always say we're a bridge school. So we're working with students. This is their first post-secondary ed experience. And they enroll at Arrupe for 2 years. They complete 61 credits, mostly their general ed requirements. And then they're well positioned to transfer, either to continue at Loyola Chicago for a bachelor's degree or to transfer to another four-year institution, another senior institution, to pursue a bachelor's degree at that institution.
And so this is associated with Loyola University Chicago. How expensive is it for students?
So this is really, when I was the dean and executive director, I would say this is Loyola's great gift to the city of Chicago. The cost for the student is under $2,000 a year for 2 semesters, a fall semester, a spring semester, and a summer session. How do we do this? We leverage the assets of the larger university, of Loyola University. We're housed at Loyola University. It's a commuter school, so students aren't paying for room and board. 61% of my budget is covered by student revenue. Pell grants, state aid, in the state of Illinois, that's the MAP grant, SEOG, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and then a small tuition if a student's expected family contribution is above $3,000 and below $9,000. If your EFC is higher than $9,000, you're too wealthy to go to Arrupe College, so we're not interested in you. And but 2/3 of the students at Arrupe were paying no tuition because their EFCs were below $3,000.
So they get a high quality education, but with no debt.
Well, that's the goal. You know, I mean, we know the horror stories of student debt. We know that the student debt for students of color are higher than for their white counterparts. And Arrupe College, 96%. Black and Latinx, and again, Pell eligible students, undocumented students. So the goal was to design a college where students would get a high quality, high touch, higher ed experience, complete their associate's degrees, and complete with little to no debt. And one of our great stats has been this: 74% of the students who graduate from Arrupe College complete with no debt. I mean, that is a huge story in higher education. And then for those who do incur debt, the average amount is under $1,400. So again, you know, to go to a private liberal arts college, in this case a Jesuit one, for $1,400 a year is unheard of. So yeah, this is we think it's a very exciting model in Jesuit higher ed and Catholic higher ed, and I think for higher ed in general.
So, so how do you find these students? Why do students choose Arrupe? What are their options? Because it sounds like a great model, high quality education, little to no debt. But why? So how do you make the connections? How do you fill your class?
Yeah. You know, Arrupe has been blessed with very talented admissions personnel who form relationships with feeder schools, feeder high schools. 2/3 of Arrupe students are graduates of Chicago's public high schools, CPS. The rest, maybe 10, 12, 13% are graduates of Catholic high schools, and the rest are from Chicago charter high schools. So when we first pitched Arrupe College to principals, to college counselors in these high schools, and we told them about this, and we told them the financial model, they said, this is like an answer to our prayers, and particularly for this population, the B-, C+, C students who have the capacity to be successful in college, but would benefit from more support and would never receive an academic scholarship from Loyola University because their grades in high school, for whatever reasons, just weren't high enough. Yeah. So, you know, through the years, and Arrupe has enrolled 6 classes now, we've developed very strong relationships with feeder schools around the Chicagoland area. And they are great partners with us. They understand our model. They understand who we're looking for. You probably recall this, but this is a real unique feature to Arrupe, we interview all of our prospective students. And that helps us to gauge the interest of the student. If the young woman, the young man is willing to take the train or come in on a Saturday morning to meet the dean, to meet with faculty members, to meet with current students, most importantly, and then to be interviewed by faculty, and now alumni of Arrupe are conducting interviews. That's extraordinary. But we're able to really assess, is the student committed to doing this? Early on in this interview process, I was the designer of this, and one of the questions we asked was, have you ever experienced an obstacle? What was it? How did you handle it? What did you learn from it? Are you still in it? And I was looking for grit and persistence and resilience. But of course, the presumption was that, oh, well, you're Pell eligible. Oh, well, you're from the South Side. Oh, you must be experiencing an obstacle. That's what we call the deficit narrative. Well, we flip that. And instead, now during the interview, we'll say, Arrupe College is an extraordinary community, as you're hearing from the current students who are speaking to in panels and conducting tours. And from your application, it looks like, you have a lot of gifts and talents that could make an already very robust community even stronger. Can you talk about, a strength of yours that you think, could benefit our college community here? Now, some students, these are seniors in high school, and they feel kind of put upon or bashful. So, we'll say, well, what does your grandmother say about you, or your girlfriend, or your favorite teacher, or your basketball coach? And then that usually, gets the juices flowing. That's the asset narrative. They are bringing assets to a college campus, not what's your obstacle.
That's great. I mean, so you found another way besides the traditional higher ed selection method, which is test scores and grades, to find kind of truly the talent and the potential. It just has to be supported. That's awesome.
Paul Tuff, the author of The Years That Matter Most, wrote about Arrupe College. This book came out last year. And he said, if you're a student and your grades are too high, and if your family makes too much money, then Arrupe is not interested in you.
Well, you have other options, right?
Right. That's right.
And so this is for that student that can make it, and has the potential, but maybe they did hit an obstacle, or they had some situation and they just needed another chance and they needed an advocate. So that's awesome that you're giving this group of students an opportunity. So, okay. So we've let these students in, we educate them with a rigorous academic environment. What are the results, Father Steve?
Well, we've discussed the little to no debt. Community colleges in urban areas like Chicago or New York or other cities, for lots of different reasons, the two-year completion rates are low. Arrupe is seeing 6 and 7 and 8 times better completion rates, graduation rates, and two-year graduation rates than their counterparts in city colleges and community colleges in these urban areas. But wait, there's more. As I said, we're a bridge program, and Arrupe attracts students who are interested in getting a bachelor's degree. 88% of the graduates of Arrupe College go on and enroll in four-year institutions. And here's an extraordinary stat. So nationally, 14% of students who begin in community colleges complete their bachelor's degree in 6 years, 14%. At Arrupe, we're looking at 75% completing their bachelor's degree in 5 years' time. All right, so the 2 years at Arrupe, and then 2.5, or maybe 3 years at the senior institution. 75% have completed their bachelor's in 5 years' time. So, you know, these are great numbers, you know, and it's important for the students. It's important for their families, for their communities. It's important for the economy that these students are completing. They're qualified, they're credentialed, they're well trained, they're well prepared, and now they're ready to take on entry-level positions and to be successful.
That is tremendous in terms of the results and in terms of a differentiated approach. Okay, you've built Arrupe. That's great. That's one school that serves maybe 300 to 400 students, 150 to 200 in a cohort. Is it a unicorn, Father Steve?
Well, it isn't yet. So that's where you and I met, Tim, because the big question that a lot of friends of mine and a lot of funders had was, all right, can this be replicated? Is it scalable? And so almost from the beginning, I was getting inquiries from other leaders from other campuses around the country saying, hey, we're very interested in what you're doing. We want to learn more about this. And one of them was an outstanding leader at St. Thomas University, a Catholic institution in St. Paul, Minnesota, Julie Sullivan, who was very persistent, saying, well, we want to start a version of Arrupe College at our campus. So they're serving young people, again, first post-secondary ed experience in the Twin Cities, and their numbers are very similar. Great completion rates. They've graduated 2 classes. They're continuing on to 4-year institutions, and remarkable. So this past year, you know, I have 3 vows, and one of them is the vow of obedience. So I report to a superior in the Jesuits, who the Jesuits have been very supportive of our work in Chicago. And he said, well, let's see if we can replicate this nationally, and you're the guy to do this. So we've started the Come to Believe Network and Foundation to create a network of these schools. And myself and a wonderful colleague, Susan Kniff, we are serving as consultants, advising other institutions, other 4-year institutions who have followed the Arrupe story, who are looking at the successes at St. Thomas, and who are saying, we need to do this. We're missing out on great students. We have a responsibility here. This is our mission. This is a way of contributing to our local community and recruiting students from the local community. And so we're now working with, well, we've worked with Drake University. They're opening their 2-year college in 2021. And we are facilitating the exploration that's going on at Fairfield University, another Jesuit school in Connecticut. The president there is very excited about working with students who are in Bridgeport, the neighboring city to Fairfield.
Excellent. Okay, so I recall when you asked us, as you were thinking about, okay, if we're going to replicate this, what is it we're replicating? Was your question to me. Right. Because you were in it, right? You lived it, breathed it, and your team had lived it and breathed it. And so your question to us was, okay, what is it that we would be replicating? What makes this successful? And I'll tell you what I found, and I have some questions about what our team found. I have some questions about these. So the first thing is, it was a high quality, you didn't skimp on the classes. We're talking about academic rigor that you might expect at a first-year experience, second-year experience as a Jesuit school. So I think one was academic rigor because of the objective to eventually move on to a 4-year school. Now, some may not, some may just move into the workforce, but with such a high percentage moving on to a 4-year school, you've got to have that academic rigor. Secondly, maybe this is somewhat unique because I called it intensive advising, but I think you've used the term intrusive advising. Can you talk about that?
Well, sure, of course. Yeah, we used to laugh. That was based on my personality. But intrusive advising, so this is really, I mean, your team at Accenture and you, Tim, and it was such a pleasure to work with you. You picked up on this right away that, you know, a big part of our secret sauce was a gifted faculty of scholars who also, this is me speaking now as a Catholic priest, but really use Pope Francis as a model of accompanying students during their first post-secondary ed experience. And some of that accompanying included academic advising. So again, you know, a lot of community colleges are under-resourced and academic advisors are overwhelmed. They have hundreds of advisees, and those students, you know, the advising, just it's impossible for them to gain access in a meaningful way or in ways that they need from their academic advisors. So our faculty members have 20 to 25 advisees. They're teaching them. As you said, we're 350 to 400 students enrolled at Arrupe College. We're talking to each other all the time. So that's the intrusion. I mean, for these poor students, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because you know, the faculty met every Wednesday about students. The support staff, the student success staff was working in tandem with the faculty to support the students to get them across the completion line. The administration was very hands-on with these students. So it was a joy to work and collaborate in this environment. And that academic advising, that intrusive advising was a huge part of it, along with the wraparound support services that our student success team provided. Social workers, a robust orientation program that included a residential experience, a breakfast and lunch program that, yes, did address food insecurity, but also was an instrument for building community. So students would gather every day, and we renovated a space in the building. It's beautiful, and you know, there was a great sense of community, a great sense of belonging. And we know this from other research that if a student from any background is on any campus and she feels like she doesn't belong there, it'll be extremely difficult for her to be successful, to persist, and to complete. And you know, I just can't say enough about my former colleagues at Arrupe who are really facilitating and fostering that sense of belonging in their classes, in their advising, in the co-curriculars, in the cafeteria, in the counseling.
So that's a great summary, I think, of what we found, that kind of that package, that any one of them, another institution, another associate's program might have, but it's the four of them together that helps, that it seemed to us, create a unique experience for the student. On the academic side, I want to take one of the questions we've gotten so far. This is from Thea Noble. What are your strongest areas of study? So it's a liberal arts curriculum, but as graduates think about where they're going to go next, certainly college is a time to explore what you might want to do, what you might want to study. What kind of focus areas or what kind of areas of study are there? Is it just a general curriculum?
Yeah, so the students at Arrupe College in Chicago and the two-year college at St. Thomas University is called the Doherty Family College, DFC. They are doing their general ed requirements, but their courses are very similar to the courses that their counterparts are taking at St. Thomas University as freshmen and sophomores, at Loyola University Chicago. And you know, our faculty and our associate dean for academics and I worked very closely with department chairs and other deans and faculty from Loyola University Chicago when we were designing the syllabus and when we were deciding on what courses would be offered and how we would deliver those courses. So this is, you know, I mean, the core for a Jesuit school, for a Catholic school, often includes a theology and a philosophy requirement. And so our students do courses in theology or religious studies and in philosophy. But then the rest, it's a lot of intro-level courses, preparing students for associate's degrees in arts and humanity, arts and sciences, social sciences, and business, and also a focus in STEM courses. Our students have gone on with their 61 credits, which articulate, obviously they transfer to Loyola. Our students have gone on many to state schools in the Chicago area because that price point made the most sense, and because there are some very good state schools in Illinois. Some of the other Catholic schools in the Chicago area, but then also to schools like the University of Wisconsin in Madison, or the University of Southern California, or Jesuit schools like Georgetown or Loyola in Baltimore, or Marquette University, Regis University in Denver, Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. And these students, for the most part, reported that they were very well prepared to go on as juniors and to begin their coursework and to really focus in on their majors. They did some pre-major courses with us at Arrupe, and now they were ready to, like many juniors are, okay, now it's time. They've declared their major and they're focused on the major.
So that's an impressive list of schools. And when you think about the opportunities, maybe some of these students, the limited opportunities they saw coming out of high school, it sounds like they made a transformation, if you will, during that experience. In a sense, built confidence. They're actors in their own future. Their voices have been, so they have a true voice in their future. What is it that kind of that facilitates that transformation? If you could speak to that, how do you work with students? Is it the testing them and saying, yeah, we can actually challenge you and you can do it? Or is it part of the advising piece? Could you talk a little bit about that transformation process? Because yeah.
I can't emphasize enough the work that my colleagues did and continue to do in terms of inculcating a culture of belonging. So students would enroll at Arrupe College, and oftentimes they think, wow, Loyola University, really? I never saw myself here. There's, again, a lot of literature about students who, wonder, do they belong, and the imposter syndrome. And then what happens, when the student gets her first test back and she fails? What happens when the student gets his first paper back and it's a sea of red? That's confirmation that you don't belong, all right? And so, our faculty and my colleagues, and this is my language, we used to say to students, all right, it's not a great grade,
Yeah.
However, this is not a forever thing, okay? This is transient, what did you do that you would have done differently to prepare for the test? Oh, I worked extra hours. Oh, my father is going through a deportation case. Oh, there's an illness in my family. Oh, I didn't have internet at my house. All of that's what surfaces it. And then the faculty member who's the advisor or the professor or the counselor can strategize with the student and say, okay, well, that was then, now what can we do differently this time around? Because it looks like, next week is your next paper. So how do we address, what didn't work for you the last time and make it work a little bit better for the next assignment or for the next test? Well, if a student persists and works with faculty members, sees our counselors, she begins to say, wow, I do belong at Loyola University. And, I like statistics. or I never really thought about theology this way. And it's actually kind of meaningful, and I might want to minor in this, or, I like accounting. And so my intro courses in accounting have been really worthwhile. So maybe I want to get into a business school, a business degree when I graduate from Arrupe. They begin to see themselves that they do belong in, and they'll be successful, and they'll be contributing to a college campus community.
That's great. I want to thank Thea and Jessica for their questions so far. This has been good.
Well, now, Tim, what about your work with us? So you and your great team, and when we talk about scaling Arrupe, you identified what you all called, and I use this term all the time now, the fit criteria. If another higher ed institution wants to replicate the successes of Arrupe and the Doherty Family College at St. Thomas University, what do you think about that? And this is your industry, so how would you advise higher ed leaders about this?
So I think it's what we identified. It starts at the top. You have to have a board and a president that is willing to champion this initiative. And we believe that this is something for an existing institution to sponsor because of the things that you talked about around the economic model. You need a host institution. It's not a standalone model, this one. You've got to have, clearly you want to have a demographic in the area that the current model that is around students that commute, or in today's world, they're remote, right? So that may offer additional possibilities, but in order to create that sense of belonging, that's going to be important. The host is going to provide the infrastructure. You're going to need access to and expertise in aid for your students and philanthropy, because part of this is going to be, we know your model, the Doherty model. There is the ongoing philanthropy that happens. That's one model, that you raise the money you need every year to fill the gap, right? And the more money you raise, the smaller the gap for the students, right? They've got to fill. Or hopefully you've got, you can start with an endowment that spins off, right, the 5% or so that you need in order to do that. But I would say the real conversation starts when you engage the president and the board why to do this. And it's the why that I think is important, because yes, so far the examples you've given, except for Drake, have been Catholic, right? There's an association with the mission, certainly, right? But let's put that aside for a second. If you think about what's going on in higher ed today, and you just look at it from the standpoint of, from a donor and philanthropy standpoint, the days of alumni giving to their alma maters, it's now in the single digits on average across the country. And so the question becomes, one of the questions becomes, how do you get access to new donors? Because some say, okay, why don't some of the most elite institutions do this? And in some sense, the donors there are like, okay, this institution has enough money in their endowment. But you will find, and what we found with Loyola University Chicago, with the Doherty Family College in St. Thomas found, and what I think we're going to find is you're going to have access to new donors. And I think if for no other reason, you're thinking you have access to new donors, and that can help build your own infrastructure and also the infrastructure that's going to be available to these schools. And I'd say that there's another reason. So access to employers, because I know at Accenture, we're not only looking for the Doherty Family College, or we're not only looking for the Arrupe or Doherty Family College student that graduates in 4 years. We're also actively looking, and I know other schools, particularly in the Chicago area, other companies are looking for graduates of 2-year programs that they can start at an entry level and they can grow in their organization. We're looking at that in the technical fields, hiring all kinds of associate degree students, whether they be technical or liberal arts, to start with us. They may decide to go back and get a 4-year degree, but we want them to stay because the access to talent is, we are so big, and the population of students of high school students is shrinking. So we need to expand the pool. It is a business need. So if you want access to employers, you want access to new donors, it just makes sense that a forward-thinking, innovative school, existing traditional school, would think about this model, because we feel, I feel like it's not only the mission piece, I think it's a rational decision.
Well, Tim, I remember you presenting that to the Arrupe board. Our board chair asked this question, and of course, he's a believer, but he said, why would any college or university start this program? And you said, it's about revenue, from new donors. And also the business community, as you say, is looking for pipelines, and they can they'll be excited to support these pipelines, like an Arrupe College model. All right. Now, you're the host, so are there any questions for us, or?
Well, we had the one from Thea about the strongest areas of study, and the one from Jessica about helping students find their voice. What I might, let's see, as we wait for any additional questions, we might take a look at, and we just talked about one of the questions I had, which was, which I've gotten from others, is, does this need to be Catholic? And I think that's proven out through the inquiries you've gotten and from the model we just talked about. But it's interesting. How do you think, so given the sense of belonging that's really part of this, and the connectedness, how has the pandemic affected Arrupe, and how do you create that sense of belonging to this year's entering class?
Yeah, it's certainly challenging, when Arrupe went online in March with the rest of the world. We were well positioned. One of our support services was that every student, when he or she enrolls at Arrupe, receives a laptop. And we also make sure that all the students had the equipment if their internet at home was not always reliable. And so we saw in the winter and spring and summer, particularly a lot of activity from student success. Lots of opportunities to gather online, to continue to build community, whether it was, coffee conversations, or the social workers were still offering their services online. Our financial aid officers were still working with students and counseling them. If a student had a legal issue, our pro bono legal support was available to those students. So all of that was there, and then there were lots of opportunities to gather after George Floyd, just as a community to process that, and for me to learn from and listen to people's exhaustion. One of our graduates, we gathered with alumni, and one of our graduates who went on to a Jesuit school and is now getting a master's in educational technology at yet another Jesuit school, he said, Father, you taught us about the social contract in our philosophy classes. And he said, the social contract's been broken. you know, and I thought that was an extraordinarily, you know, succinct summation of this experience, and how he applied his philosophy class from his first semester at Arrupe College. You know, my colleagues now at Arrupe, with the new class, they're finding opportunities to gather with them, you know, in small groups, outdoors, you know, in parks, in neighborhoods, that kind of a thing. It's difficult, you know, but it's a great team that's very committed to building relationships. I mean, you know, there was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Ed today saying, how do students learn in classrooms? Because they have relationships with their professors and with each other. And we found that that's what was, you know, drove the students across the finish line at Arrupe College. So, you know, this is every other campus in this country is now working on building those relationships somehow. So is Arrupe, and the size, and also the culture that was established in the first 5 years, I think is influencing and serving as a North Star to create opportunities, you know, as long as it's safe for students, faculty, staff, alumni to gather.
So when you think about it, if you're able to do that, and you're able, I noticed when we talked about the economic model and we ran the numbers, right? You're able to provide a high quality education, a connectedness and a sense of belonging and community for these students. And you're doing that at a cost of anywhere from 15 to 17,000, depending on how you look at it. I gotta think that during this time of tremendous volatility, change in higher ed, that what you've created is going to cause some people to think about what they're doing, who they're doing it for, and why they're doing it, and I think can bring about tremendous change. So the more that we, I think the more Arrupes, Doherty family colleges that we can propagate across the country, I think more people will come to believe.
Well, thanks, Tim. That's the work of the network, you know, and Susan and I can provide those kinds of supports. We've developed a model with you that if a host institution has those fit criteria that were identified during the replication study, then we really believe there's a high probability of success. You know, if they follow our roadmap, and I mean, talk about creating